Hello, Algebra 1. Today we are talking about graphing and multiple representations. We are going to talk about interpreting graphs, plotting points, and also creating multiple representations given a situation. So you have graphed before, but let's go over some of the basics. The vertical axis, meaning up and down, on the coordinate plane is called the y-axis. The horizontal axis on the coordinate plane, that's left and right, is called the x-axis. Points are always written like this, x comma y with parentheses, and the x coordinate shows us how far we are going to the left or right from 0, 0, which we also call the origin. The y coordinate tells us how far we are going up or down from 0, 0. So we are just going to identify the following points and their location or quadrant. Notice the quadrant numbers are listed in the corners here. Okay, that is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So letter A is actually a tricky one to start with. We are not going left or right at all. So we have a 0, but we are going down 1. So this is 0, comma, -1, and this is actually on the y-axis, which we can see the y right here and the x-axis right here. Letter B, we are going right 4 and down 3. That makes this 4, -3, and we are in quadrant 4. Letter C, I am going left 9 and down 6. That makes this -9, comma, -6, and this is in quadrant 3. Letter D, I go right 1 and up 2, so that's a 1, comma, 2, and I am in quadrant 1. E, I go left 7 and up 4, so that's -7, 4, and I am in quadrant 2. And finally F, I am going right 8 and up 6, so that's an 8, comma, 6, and I'm in quadrant 1 again. So now let's figure out where these following points would be located. So these are really large numbers, but we should still be able to figure out where they are. So -45, 100, that means we would go left 45 and up 100, so I would still be in quadrant 2. 300, comma, -4, this means I'm going right 304 and down 4. That puts me in quadrant 4. Zero, -1000. 0, -1000 means I'm going straight down 1000, so this would be on my y-axis. And -25,000, 0, that means I'm going straight to the left, which would mean I'm going to be on the x-axis. All right, so now take a minute and pause the video and see if you can plot these 4 points and also label their axis. Okay, go ahead and pause now and then come back. Okay, welcome back. I have gone ahead and plotted our points. I want you to pay extra special attention to whether your I and your H are correct, because these are ones that people frequently flip, so be careful of that. G should be in quadrant 3. Just down here. H is on the y-axis. I, which is over here on the x-axis. And J, we would say that's in quadrant 4. All right, so again, just be careful about H and I, especially that you didn't switch those. All right, back to our good friend Roses Are Red. We knew that Roses Are Red had a $20 service fee and was 75 cents per rose, and Flower Power had a $60 service fee and was 50 cents per rose, and we are using the graphs below to help answer the following questions. So here are your graphs, and we have that the shapes of both graphs show a steady increase in the cost of roses as the number of roses ordered increases. The roses are red line starts blank but is steeper. Okay, it starts lower. See, it's down at 20. This means that the service charge of roses are red is lower, right? The service charge was $20 versus $60, but the charge per rose is higher. Okay, and this is something we're going to talk about a lot this unit. You can see that this is a steeper line. That means our charge per rose is higher. The roses are red line intersects the y-axis at 0, 20, and the flower power line intersects the y-axis at 0, 60. And again, these data points represent the cost of the service fee or the service charge or the starting cost, whatever you want to call it, for each flower company. Okay, another important thing about graphs we haven't discussed is something called scale. Scale is how much each tick mark, okay, or dash on your graph is worth. Not each mark needs to have a number, and the scale must be the same for the whole axis. If you don't want to use or don't want to start at 0, we can make what's called a break, okay, which looks like a Z kind of. So we're going to practice that in just a minute. Let's look at this a little more. Find the scale of the y-axis of each of these graphs. All right, so we are just looking at the y-axis because if you notice, the x-axis of these graphs are exactly the same. So what I mean by the tick marks are these little guys right here. Notice not everyone has a number, but what each tick mark represents, that's what our scale is. So you can see that the numbers are going by 4s. However, there is a tick mark right in between because this is 0. So what's right between 0 and 4? 2. So this guy's really jumping by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on and so forth. Graph B, again, look at your tick mark. It's not going by 2s, that's just what the numbers are. There's a tick mark in between 0 and 2, and so that would just be a 1. Okay, this is really jumping by 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. Okay, and finally graph C, what is this tick mark representing? Well, what's right between 0 and 8? Just a 4. So this guy's really jumping by 4s. All right, last thing we're going to do is put all of our representations together. Warren Sport Awards is catering Germano's Pizza. Warren pays a $10 fee to place the order with an additional $5 per student attending the awards ceremony. Fill in the verbal, numeric, algebraic, and graphic representations below to show this situation. So again, we're dealing with money. We should know that's cost. Cost is dependent. Notice also with your table here, cost is on this side. Your dependent variable is always going to be on this side of your table. So that can be helpful to you. If you look at your table, you know cost is independent, or excuse me, you know cost is dependent, which means number of students has to be independent. Okay, so even though, again, we know that cost is always dependent, you can also see your dependent variable on this side of your table every time. So I can just look at my table and say, oh, cost is dependent, number of students is independent. And now you can write your sentence. The cost depends on the number of students. Okay, so now let's go ahead and fill out our table. How much are we paying up front? $10 fee, okay, plus it says $5 per student. So again, the 5 is multiplying to the 50 because it's $5 per student. $10 fee plus $5 per student, but 100 students are coming. $10 fee plus $5 per student, but 110 are coming. And this should give us $260, $510, and $560. So that is 2 of our representations, and we have 2 left. The next is algebraic. This just means our function rule. So remember to identify your variables. I'm just going to put them in my table. Students, I'm going to make S, and cost, I'm going to make C. And again, always start with your dependent variable, so cost equals, and then let's just look at the pattern in your table. We're spending $10 plus $5 per student. All right, and that's it. Now we're going to graph. So when you graph, make sure that you have labels and a title, and here's how we'll go ahead and do this. This guy right here, your independent, this is always your x-axis, and your dependent, this is always your y-axis. So that means number of students is going to be the label on my x-axis, and cost is going to be my label on my y-axis. All right, again, it just matches right there. And this is always true, x comma y. We also need a title, so I'm going to call this Sports Awards. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to look at our x values and we're going to see what they're jumping by. We have 50 to 110, so what I'm just going to do is jump by 10s here. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. 110, 20, 30, 40, 150. Okay, so notice my scale that I just did, I went by 10s. Even though I only put numbers every 50, each of my tick marks is going up by 10s. So that is my scale on my x or horizontal axis. So now your cost, notice you start all the way up at 260. I am going to use what's called a break. That means that we're going to make a little x guy, and that means we can start at whatever value you want. So I'm just going to start at 200, and I need to get all the way up to 560. I am going to jump by 50s. It's not going to be perfect, but there's 250. Okay, here's 300, 350, 400, 450, 500. Make this a little bigger, 550, 600. Okay, and now I have all of my numbers I should be able to fit. And again, I did use a break, okay, because I put this little X guy, and my scale, it's what I am jumping by with my tick marks, so I really jumped by 50s. Okay, and your final step is to go ahead and plot your points. So the first point is 50, 260. So we will go over to 50, and then 260 is going to be right above 250, and I am going to write it. I'm going to write my point just like that. Okay, you're estimating 100, 510. Here's 100. 510 will be right above 500. Okay, and again, I'm going to write my point. And finally, 110, 560. So 110 is right here. 560 will be kind of right where my title is. And you should notice these dots go in kind of a straight line. You do not need to connect them. You're just going to leave it just like this. If you notice they're not in a straight line, you really want to make sure your spacing is correct. All right. So we'll talk more about this the next time we see each other. I hope you have a great day. Bye.